This is where I'm starting the video. So if you're watching this in the future, we have now gone to the Shane Van Gisbergen segment of the live stream. We used to have on Saturdays the Xfinity races, and we would break down each little part of the race. I'd make a video, I'd do all this editing, and on and on and on. Talk about his day. Well, now that he is racing in Cup, I can't really do that because I still have to focus on the Cup race. So we're going to carve out a section of the Monday after, and we're going to talk about Shane Van Gisbergen's Cup Series days. Now, for those of you who don't know, and I saw a comment about this, so I'm going to need some clarification from you. But in Australia and New Zealand, I don't know if they either don't have Max or they don't have HBO Max, whatever it's called, or they don't have the in-car cameras. But basically, HBO Max in the United States now, if you have a subscription, you can go watch any onboard you want of any driver that is in the Cup Series field. You can listen to their radio along with the onboard, and you watch it the entire race. So I had it on my second TV last night next to the big TV with the main broadcast, and I tried to figure it out because it was my first night doing it. But then today, you can go back and watch the live replay of the entire race on the onboard. So I went back and I watched Shane Van Gisbergen's onboard, listened to the radio, just kind of seeing how the communication was going, seeing if there was anything interesting of note that happened. And that's where we get to Shane Van Gisbergen's day. And so, yes, that is a possibility. So Shane Van Gisbergen's first ever Clash weekend. The Clash is held at Bowman Gray Stadium. And for those of you who don't know, Bowman Gray Stadium is a quarter-mile racetrack in Winston-Salem, North Carolina. It's a football field, and I think it's a high school. Maybe it's a small college or university football field. But look, it's a quarter mile around a football field here. There's Winston-Salem in the background. You can see the city. Fun fact about Winston-Salem, they have a United States University. Wake Forest is there. I don't know where in this picture Wake Forest is, I got to be honest with you. And no, this is not Wake Forest's football field. I can confirm that much. But this was Shane Van Gisbergen's first ever Clash. This was his first ever race on a quarter-mile track in NASCAR. So the Clash is a preseason race. I guess it's to build hype, to build excitement about the NASCAR season. But essentially, a big thing about it is that we kind of just talked about it in the live stream, but it's been rotating venues the past few years. It used to be at Daytona. It used to be a part of Speed Weeks. It was a really big deal, just kind of a build-up into the season. Well, this season, it was at Bowman Gray Stadium. As I said, it's the first time NASCAR has been to Bowman Gray Stadium since 1971. It's the first time the Clash has been held at Bowman Gray Stadium. It's in a part of the country, it's in a region where there are a ton of NASCAR fans, loyal NASCAR fans, short track fans. There are still short track races outside of the NASCAR world that race at this track, and they have a heavy excitement and love for their short track racing for Bowman Gray Stadium. So, in a sense, this is kind of a big deal to be coming to this track. And so Shane Van Gisbergen's first race at this weekend went pretty darn well, I would say. As I said, Shane Van Gisbergen had never raced in a quarter-mile track in NASCAR. I don't want to compare this to Martinsville, but it's the closest comparison of what tracks he's been to in the NASCAR world. It's a short track with heavy braking and kind of similar to a road course. In fact, Shane Van Gisbergen said this after the race, that it's kind of similar to a road course in the sense of heavy braking, having to control the throttle, having to, you're controlling the car a little bit more as a driver. It's a short track, and that's the majority of short tracks, especially the slow, flat ones like Martinsville and yesterday, Bowman Gray Stadium. But the weekend for Shane Van Gisbergen, pretty darn good. I can't think of a single thing that went wrong for him. So Shane Van Gisbergen, it's his first ever race in the number 88 car. It's a third full-time Trackhouse car. He's going to be racing the entire season. He's going to be racing in the Daytona 500. He's going to be racing at Talladega. He's going to be racing at Phoenix, Nashville, Mexico, you name it. He's doing all 38 Cup Series events this season, and this was number 1 of 38. So, how did he do? Let's actually talk about the results here. He was 7th to 12th the entire race. So, qualifying, the actual qualifying format, they had 3 separate groups that went and they did practice. NASCAR's never been to this track before, so there was an extended practice session. But because it's such a small track, they didn't want to throw all 40 cars on at once because that would be, I don't even want to picture it. That's horrifying. Anyways, moving on, just at the thought of that is it's mind-blowing. It's scary. So they split it up. Shane Van Gisbergen was in Group 2. In practice speeds, he was doing decent. I can't even remember where he was in practice, but for the most part, that first group, in terms of the single lap speed, that first group, they had the fastest laps. Then we got to qualifying. So the first 2 sessions of practice, that was practice. Learning the track, learning the car, learning what the tires were going to do, learning how the car was handling, making your tweaks, making your adjustments. Well, then we get to qualifying. And qualifying is this whole third different session, but instead of having, as I said, they split the field into thirds. Instead of having 13 cars on the field or on the track at once and doing an 8-minute session, they split those 3 groups into halves again. So now you had 6 or 7 cars, but you only got 4 minutes to practice, or in this case, qualify. Now, the fastest single lap would get you the pole in heat race number 1. If you were the second fastest, you were on pole for heat race number 2. Third fastest, pole for heat race number 3. Fourth fastest, pole for heat race number 4. And so on and so forth. So fifth fastest would start second in heat 1. Sixth fastest would start second in heat 2. You guys can do the math. I truly believe in you. But Shane Van Gisbergen was in the group that went really fast. The first few groups, they had their guys like William Byron, Kyle Larson, that went pretty fast. They did pretty good in their qualifying efforts. But then Shane Van Gisbergen's group went 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Like overall. Like just swept the stage, swept the leaderboard. And SVG was 5th through, I think he was group 2B. So through 4 of the 6 groups, after the 4th group, which he was in, he was 5th overall. I was like, wow, that's crazy. For a guy who the majority of his career has not raced ovals. He has been on street circuits. He's been on road courses in Australian supercars. And yes, I am aware he's done other types of racing, open wheel, he's done some dirt stuff, but he has never been on a stock car or in a stock car on this style track, and he gets in the car and he ends up qualifying 10th overall. That was like, what? I didn't expect that. I came into the weekend thinking he was going to be in the 20s, maybe in the 30s. I thought, honestly, he might have to be fighting for a spot in this race in the last chance qualifier. But SVG kind of blew everyone away, and he qualified 10th overall. So he got to start 3rd in heat race number 2, I think. And he sat there the entire race. And the goal in the heat races, in the first heat races, if you finish in the top 5, you advance to the main event. And SVG, he just sat in 3rd the entire race. Just sat there, minded his own business, didn't get anyone mad, advances to the main event. Now, this track is all about beating and banging. Remember last year at Martinsville, those of you who watched, we talked about the bump and run, typical Martinsville stuff. That's every single lap here at Bowman Gray. That is the only way to pass here at Bowman Gray. You can't set someone up for a pass. You can't really cross anyone over. You can't do anything crazy. You truly have to bump and run, or you have to just get a great run around the outside. We saw that a couple times throughout the weekend. But the biggest thing here was avoiding the LCQ, because the LCQ itself was chaos. There was a ton of wrecks. Everyone was being over-aggressive, and SVG avoided that. And he's in the main event, and he starts the main event in 10th, I believe. So yeah, SVG ends up starting 10th on the night, and that's where he ran the entire night. I'm not even kidding. When I went back and watched the onboard this morning, he got up to 7th early on. A couple times he fell to 12th, but I kid you not. I don't think he ever fell behind 12th position. There were no live pit stops. There were no strategy calls in this race, but you had to avoid a little bit of chaos. There was no crazy wrecks like we saw in the LCQ or even some of the heat races, but we saw a lot of bump and runs. We saw a lot of movement. We saw some restarts where people were getting stacked up. In fact, one time, SVG, I think it was Cindric, he rear-ended him so hard trying to bump him out of the way, he got on the radio and said, "Hey, you might want to check the front of my car. I just hit that guy really hard." So he got some more NASCAR etiquette knowledge in a sense, in that he got to bump and run some people. He got bump and ran. He got to learn how other people raced him. And it's the old saying, treat people how you want to be treated. Well, if you're going to get raced one way, that's how you got to race them back. And SVG did a pretty good job of doing that. And every once in a while, he'd do his own ruffling of feathers. He'd go and bump someone out of the way if they weren't getting out of the way, if he was faster than them. But as I said, he sat 7th to 12th the entire night. He had a great race. For your first ever clash, for your first ever race at a quarter-mile track in NASCAR, albeit this current crop of field, they've only been racing on quarter miles in the Cup Series for 4 years now, but they grew up doing this kind of thing, racing on these type of tracks. Pretty impressive, honestly. He goes on, he finishes 9th, I believe. Let me confirm. Yeah, he finishes 9th. Look at this right here. Started 10th, finished 9th, moved up a position. And if that's a sign for the rest of the season, that's a really, really good start of the year. Once again, best comparison is Martinsville, but it's still not even close. But Martinsville, we saw how well SVG did last year when he ran in the Martinsville fall race and finished 12th. So these short, flat ovals are similar to road courses in a sense, in that it's heavy braking, it's controlling the throttle, it's maintaining your car, maintaining your tire, making sure you don't burn yourself up in terms of the tires and the car itself, not your physical body. But, yeah, I mean, what a start. And then another little neat fact here. This is a great Twitter account to follow, Auto Racing Analytics. He does all this stuff, like, for example, had the entire 200 laps at Bowman Gray Racing Stadium, had been on the median lap speed data. This is where the top 4 would have finished. Elliott would have annihilated the field, 4 cars on the lead lap. But this is an interesting one. Had the final 50 laps been based on fourth quarter median lap speed data, this is roughly where the cars would have finished on track. And if you look at this graphic here, first, Elliott. Second, Blaney. Third, Hamlin. Fourth, Logano. Fifth, Cindric. Sixth, Chastain. Seventh, Wallace. SVG would have still been 8th. So it's not like he got in the top 10 and he was holding everyone up behind him and he knew how to handle a bump and he was playing great defense. He had straight up speed. So I think that wraps up this week's SVG recap. So for everyone watching in the post, thanks for watching this video. It's a live stream, but I'm saying video. This is weird. I hope you enjoyed it. Hopefully this gets better by the week. Once again, this is a new experiment we're trying here. But I hope you enjoyed it. This is a live stream, so I'm sorry that it's not as clear, cut, or crisp as a video. But it's something different. We're trying something different here. To everyone in the live stream who's watching right now and is just watching me ramble on and on about Shane Van Gisbergen's day, thank you for your patience. But yeah, that's the end of the video. Thanks for watching.